Good evening, everyone. I'm Arya Viren, Organizing Committee member of Vaze Model United Nations, and it's my privilege and pleasure to welcome here our speakers of the day, Mr. Julio Ribeiro, sir, and Mr. VP Raja, sir, Dr. PP Sharma, Principal of VG Vaze College, CA Vidyadhar Joshi, sir, Vice Principal of VG Vaze College, all the dignitaries and participants present here today. I, on behalf of Public Concern for Governance Trust in association with Vaze Model United Nations, organized in collaboration with United Nations Information Center for India and Bhutan by the Political Science Department of KET's VG Vaze College, would like to welcome you all to this webinar on the topic Leadership, Innovation and Team Building. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome our speakers today, Mr. Julio Ribeiro, sir. Mr. Ribeiro graduated in Commerce and Law from Mumbai University. He joined the Indian Police Service in 1953 and rose to the Commissioner of Police Mumbai from February 1982 to May 1985. Later, he served in quick succession as Director General, Central Reserve Police Force, Director General of Police Gujarat, Special Secretary to the Government of India's Home Ministry, Director General of Police Punjab, and finally, Advisor to the Governor of Punjab. Besides other awards, he is the recipient of the Padma Bhushan in 1987. Post-retirement, he was appointed as ambassador to Romania, where he served for 4 years from 1989 to 1993. The then Prime Minister, Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, sir, had asked him to be governor of Jammu and Kashmir, but he declined because of his involvement in social work in his native city of Mumbai. He heads the Mohalla Ekta Committee, which seeks to bring about communal harmony between the diverse communities in the city of Mumbai. We also welcome Mr. VP Raja, sir, who joined the administrative service in 1974 after obtaining 2 postgraduate degrees in physics from Delhi University and Columbia University, respectively. While in service, he completed a MA in Rural Development Planning from the University of East Anglia. He further obtained a MPhil in Social Sciences from the Indian Institute of Public Administration, New Delhi. As an IAS officer of the Maharashtra cadre, he has worked in various assignments at the district, state, and center. In recognition of his outstanding contributions to administrative reforms, while working as a collector of Satara as Transport Commissioner Maharashtra, Mr. Raja sir was awarded the Distinguished Government Administration Award. I welcome both of you.
I'm going to talk on leadership from my experience. I never made a study of leadership. It's just on experience. And my experience has been mainly with the police force. And I suppose the principles that we followed in the police would be applicable to other spheres of endeavor. But generally, though of course in the police being a uniformed force, there is another kind of hierarchy and a kind of, compulsion to follow orders. But still, I think things have changed quite a bit, and you must understand that the basic principles of leadership are the same. Now, I was the police commissioner of Mumbai when I got an order after I'd finished 3 years of service here that I should take over as DG of the CRPF. The CRPF is the biggest, in numerically at least, of paramilitary forces in our country. And it is one of the 5 top jobs in the IPS. Now, I was called for a small party before I left for Delhi to take over the new job. And there, present at that party, in fact, the party was in honor of a certain lieutenant general in the army who was the second in command for the uh, Blue Star operation in Amritsar. He was himself a Sikh, Lieutenant General Dayal, and he was to go as Lieutenant Governor of Andamans. And some gentleman whom I knew had thrown a party for him. It was a lunch party. And I went up to General Dayal and I told him, sir, I'm going as DG of the CRPF. You had the the black Blue Star operation. You had CRP forces under you. What did you think about them? And he told me, Mr. Ribeiro, I couldn't make a I can't give you a general impression or opinion about the CRPF, its morale and its leadership, etc. But I can tell you that there were so many battalions that were allotted to me. And out of those battalions, some were excellent, some were not. And he said, it all depends upon leadership. The battalions which had good leaders, they performed excellently. The battalions that had indifferent leaders did not. So you have in substance what we talk, when we talk about leadership, please understand that you should have good leaders. I have always been advocating the police reforms, but I found that even if some measure of reforms are introduced, what you require is a good leader on the top. I think all the reforms are useless unless you have good leaders. And if the government chooses the wrong people to be leading, say, the Bombay City Police Force or the Maharashtra Police, the DGP, and other forces all over the country, the DGPs concerned, then you will have a very poor kind of performance and the people will not be pleased. But very often the choice of leaders is given to the politicians and they choose for their own benefit, which will benefit them the most with the people or getting their way, their things done through the police leaders. Now, but let me tell you that the basic principles, the ones that I followed perhaps without even learning about it, nowadays in our police training college in the Central Police Training College in Hyderabad, the IPS officers are taken through all this management principles. But in those days, we didn't have that opportunity. And we just went on our own, guided by our own principles, that which we learned at home and in school and with our friends. And one of the basic principles is that you practice what you preach. That is the first principle. Suppose you say that there should be no corruption, then if you yourself have been a victim to this, then how can you preach? How can you tell your men not to do what you yourself are doing? So this is the first principle. Practice what you preach. The second principle is you take all your people with you, all your officers, because in the IPS, you join the police force at a very high level, the 7th or 8th form. We joined as assistant superintendents, which is equal to assistant commissioner of police, but we remained in that rank only for 3 years. And immediately we were promoted to the next rank, which is deputy commissioner in Bombay. At the age of 28, I became a superintendent of police, which is equivalent to deputy commissioner in Mumbai. Now, this is what we have to do, that look, you have people working for you. You have in the district so many deputy superintendents. In the commissioners, you have joint commissioners, as additional commissioners, deputy commissioners. You have to take them all along. All of them will not be of the same merit. Some of them are better than others. That is a human quality, and this is probably God given if you believe in God. But otherwise, it is something that happens naturally. But you cannot ignore the others. You have to take them along. You have to make them proud about what they are doing, even if what they are doing is less than what others do. For example, in the police force, there are sentries. They stand with guns and guard the banks, guard the government offices, they guard the ministers, the mantrala. Now they are standing for hours with their guns and they fiddle around with it and they don't know what to do because their minds are almost blank. Now, if you go and tell them, look, you are doing a very important duty, don't take it as if you have been left forgotten. Because if there was an attack and you were not there and you did not react, then what would happen to the whole police force would have got a bad name. Now, when I was in charge in Mumbai, when I was the commissioner, there was an attack on the U.S. consulate. This attack on the U.S. consulate on our Bulabai Desai Road uh, was unexpected. In fact, it was done by a madman who says that he's Prati Shiv Sena. He was in the Shiv Sena, but he was removed from there because he was eccentric. And then later on, he made his own force. He got about 20, 30 people and put them in a big truck and then took them to the US consulate and attacked it. Now, what is the attack? He began burning the cars that were in the compound. Fortunately, because we had always empowered even the lowest of our policemen, they opened fire. There was a guard, there was a police guard from Mumbai police, and the sentry on duty, he was alone. The others were resting. They, of course, joined him when the thing took place. But this is the normal way that it is conducted. There's just one sentry. But that sentry opened fire and he brought down two of the attackers, which saved our own dignity and our own name, because otherwise we would have been looked at as the most useless force, where there is a whole guard and it does nothing, and the people just go around destroying property. So this is even a small man, a cog in the wheel, a constable with a gun. He also is an important person that should be told to him and dimmed into his ears. So this is one of the principles. And now, what does a leader do? The leader, as I said, had to get everybody along. The intelligent ones, the unintelligent ones, the corrupt ones, and the non-corrupt ones. Those also have to be taken along, and they have to be controlled. Now, how do we do all that? By encouraging those who are good and also encouraging those who are not, telling and putting them in places where they can make a difference, where their own strengths, because everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. The leader has to understand that and make use of the strengths of people. I have seen in my service that a lot of leaders in the police would make a list of all the bad points of an officer working under him in order to keep him under check. It only worked the other way. It only made him more desperate. It is always better to take his good strengths, his good points, where he is useful, and make use of that. That is how we should function. Now, I had a big gangster in my time in Bombay city, Vardarajan Mudaliar, and he was ruling the whole of Chembur and Matunga, that whole area. He had all those butties in the creek. He was all this man. Now, I knew one particular IPS officer who had worked under me in the railways, in the railway police. He was in charge of the Bombay City part of the railway police, and he belonged to the classes that had been given preference in recruitment because caste-based preference. But I knew that he was very keen on making himself felt, by showing that despite his caste, he was very good in his work. So I asked the government to please post him, and I put him in that area where Vardarajan Mudaliar, and he absolutely gave me first class results. And put a man in a place where he is going to really make a difference. And that is the job of the leader. Now, this is now how do you get others also to act? You know, in the Bombay police, there is a thing called the police notice. The police notice is issued every day from the police commissioner's office. If tomorrow there is a morcha, you know, in my time there used to be Datta Samant, the labor leader, used to have different jail borough agitation, this agitation, he wanted the textile people to be paid more and that type of thing. And this man would announce his programs. Now, what the police commissioner's office would do is to say, order from the commissioner. Sometimes the commissioner also did not know because it was almost routine. 10 people from this police station will go to help the core police station. The core police station usually happened to be Azad Maidan because that is where they all started their mochas. And we used to give 10 from this police station, 10 from that, then so many from the armed headquarters, and all that would be ordered from the commissioner's office. Then I said that, look, it is a mechanical kind of order, and the people who go to carry out this order sometimes don't even know what they are sent there for. They just go there and they report along with their sub-inspector in charge. So I said, no, I used to have a meeting of my deputy commissioners every week, I think, or every day, I'm not sure. But I said, have you asked your inspectors in charge of police station how they feel we should meet this situation? And they would normally say no. They know their job. But I said, go back and tell them first to consult the policemen on the job. Even the smallest policemen should be consulted. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15-minute consultation. Ask anyone whether what he is going to do tomorrow, why he is being sent there, and what do you think that we should do to meet the problem. Then the policeman felt that he was part of the whole project, that he was part of the action, that he had given his own agreement to the whole project, to the order that we were passing from the commissioner's office. So this is how the mind works. And then they would push it up to their inspectors and the inspectors to their deputy commissioners. And finally it came to me. Of course, I had the final word. And then we issued our orders. You know, this is what they call participative management. I didn't even know that name. I just did it out of the top of my head. And then they thought that they were being consulted. Otherwise, they should just be ordered. So they became a part of the management, part of the order. And they put their mind in it, they put their heart in it, and they perform much better than they would have otherwise done. So another thing that the leader should do is take, if there is somebody who has done good work, please give the credit to him. I remember that whenever any big case was detected, the name of the Joint Commissioner in crime would always be there under his supervision. I was Joint Commissioner, I mean, Additional Commissioner at that time of crime, and I didn't even know that such a case was there. It was a small case. So I said, why have you put my name? I don't even know. They said, sir, this is a usual practice here. I said, please stop this practice. Put the name of the constable, put the name of that inspector, let them all know that they have been recognized. Because everybody likes to be recognized, especially if they do something out of the ordinary. So this is another this. And on the taking this forward, not only give the credit, but if anything goes wrong, it is the leader who should take the responsibility, should take responsibility for that. Because after all, he is the leader, he is in charge, it went wrong. I'll tell you two cases of this type. Now, I was sitting in my office and Data Samant had ordered jail bharo agitation. And we had made an open jail in R.A. Mill colony. And because there were no jails available for thousands and thousands of mill workers. So we hired BST buses because we didn't have that many vehicles. Put them in the BST buses, took them to RA colony and said, this is the jail, temporary jail. Now, if you made a temporary jail, you also have to feed them. You have to give them water, to give them different meals. So this took a little time because there were too many of them. And they began shouting and cursing and creating a ruckus. So that news came to me. I had no other alternative but to send somebody from my own control room. And that gentleman was very shaky. I said, don't worry, if anything goes wrong, I'm responsible. And fair enough, something went wrong. He had to fire. One person was brought down and he felt that he had been now crucified. So when he came back, I told him, you don't worry, I will take that responsibility. Because it so happened you didn't shoot because you wanted to shoot or you wanted to kill someone. It's because in the course of that duty or in the moment of excitement, you did that. Even if you were wrong, I take the responsibility. And I did. And I sent the report to government accordingly. And nothing happened. So you see, you have to take. Whereas I saw in the newspaper much after I returned and I had retired, that one officer who had led a party during the riots of 92 and 8 people were killed in some bakery. Finally, all the policemen who went with the officer, who was quite a high IPS officer, they were all charged. Whereas the IPS officer said, I did not go. Now that was, I thought, very poor leadership, very poor leadership. Anyway, so these things happen and then I'll tell you, the subordinates know everything about an officer. They know exactly what he's doing, what he is up to. And they will follow him if he is true to his word. And if he pretends that he is not something that he is not, well, they look through it. So this is generally the principles of leadership that should be followed in any other field of endeavor. And you should always lead by example. That is what I first said, and I repeat again. Take responsibility even when you are not there. So, and if a quick decision is taken on the spot, like happens with the police, please stick to it and take the responsibility. These are the several principles of leadership which I have followed without learning anything about leadership or management principles. I thank you for asking me to speak. I will now hand over the chair or the baton to my colleague on the trust, Mr. Raja, who has also many such cases. Many I've heard him speak so often, and he's always ready. I mean, the examples he gives and the experience he has had would help all young people. And we are very happy to talk to you all so that we get good leaders in future. We want good leaders, we want good people with good values, and this is why PCGT is so keen to have campus ambassadors and through them to get people to have good values, imbibe good values, and become good citizens and good leaders. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your experience with us, sir. Now I would request Mr. Raja, sir, to take the floor.
Thank you very much to the esteemed audience, the faculty, the students, Mr. Ribeiro, friends. Mr. Ribeiro has given a lot of ideas to think about. Now, after retirement, these days I spend a lot of time teaching. I teach at the Jamlalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies and at the Bombay Stock Exchange. And one of the courses I take is a course called Leading People in Organizations. Okay. And that course I teach for 45 hours. That is 15 lectures of three hours each. So which means there is sufficient theory on this subject. Starting with how do you define leadership? There's a lot of material even on that, on the theory aspect of it. But in a very simplistic fashion, with the help of hindsight, I will say a leader is a person, the people working for that person are prepared to do anything for him or her. They somehow feel, or a leader is a person who can make ordinary people do extraordinary things. That's how I will look at a leader. But obviously, this doesn't develop overnight. There is a famous saying that some are born great, some become great, and on some people, greatness is thrust on them. There is a truth in all these. Like Mr. Ribeiro, I remember I started service after joining the IAS. Before joining the IAS, I was mostly involved with physics and mathematics and some teaching of that as a teaching assistant. But after joining the IAS, after initial training of 1 year at the National Academy of Missouri, I was posted to this district called Nanded as supernumerary assistant collector, which means I'm still an assistant collector under training. And I still recall the date, and when I got these orders, I had to look up the map and ask some people, where is Nanded? Luckily, some of my Sardarji friends told me Nanded is a very famous place. And there is a very famous Gurudwara there. Then I had to look at the map, where is Nanded? Because I had not even come to Maharashtra before that. I was a person who had spent all my early days in Delhi and abroad. So Maharashtra I knew, but I must confess I had not even visited Bombay when I got into service. So I was coming into Maharashtra. I finally landed in Nanded as assistant collector under training on 29th August 1975. Now we are in August. Today is 24th of August. On 29th August 1975. Now every year, one of the things that happens in Maharashtra, it may happen this year also, there is hope it doesn't, but we can't. You know, Maharashtra has a large number of dams and reservoirs. And the objective of an irrigation engineer is to ensure that the water level in the dams all fill up to what can be called as the maximum safe level. Because that is the water which is used for irrigating the crops during the Rabi season. That is where the sowing starts. Some crops sowing starts in November, December, some as late as February. So the Rabi season, the irrigation for the Rabi season is done wherever there is irrigation possible from the water stored in these various reservoirs. now, when there is, so that happens on the rains that take place in a year. So in the year 1975, when I had reported in Nanded, the big reservoirs, many of which are at the start of the Godavari River in Nasik, that more or less almost full. And then heavy rain started. I see from my window that even now it is raining. Heavy rains throughout the catchment area. When there are heavy rains towards the end of the monsoon, there is a problem. The problem is, if water overflows a dam, the dam will break. So you cannot allow water to overflow a dam. You can fill the water only up to a level which is predetermined by the irrigation structural engineers, called the maximum safe level. If water is to go above that, they have to, much before that happens, they will have to open the sluices so that the water flows down. And towards the end of August, the first, 2nd September, I remember 2nd September, the collector of Nanded got a message that the irrigation dams upstream, the sluices are going to be opened, so expect heavy flooding on the banks of the Godavari. Nanded is situated on the banks of the Godavari. We have got about a 48 to 72 hour notice, because that's the time it will take for the water to move. It's raining in Nanded also. It's raining in the entire catchment area. So the collector gets on, that's an emergency. So you do, you already know through your officers, the lower level officers, they give what is called dowdy. That is, they go to the villages and announce in loudspeakers, please vacate, please vacate. And the collector organizes trucks, evacuation, and people are evacuated from the low-lying areas and brought to areas which are high-living. So many of them were brought, and one of these are called rehabilitation centers, or centers to which you shift people. And one center which was identified was the Ayurvedic college situated in Nanded. It was a Ayurvedic college and hospital, but the Ayurvedic college has a number of classrooms, and it was a fairly at a higher place. And 10,000 families could be, not families really, about 3,000 families, about 10,000 people could be accommodated in that. Like that, a number of sites, mostly their school, college things were identified. And on 3rd September, the collector tells me that, Raja, you're the camp commandant for the Ayurvedic College, Nanded. That's it. That is, I've just joined there 3-4 days ago. I'm still staying in the government guest house. I don't even have accommodation. And I'm made the overall in charge of the biggest rehabilitation camp, where about 10,000 people are expected to arrive. Okay, I get on with the job, and I don't even know people in the district because I'm new. Now, this is where certain leadership gets bestowed on you because of the position you occupy. He's the newly joined assistant collector. So the tahsildars, the revenue inspectors, the patwaris, the PWD sub-engineers, all of them will listen to you. They will listen to you because you're occupying a certain position. What in Sanskrit is often called as sthanabal. You're occupying a certain post, which automatically gives you, it doesn't give you abilities, but the system is such that people will listen to you. So, and that is one of the greatest experience. No textbook can teach leadership than what happened. Obviously, on the one hand, you're a little apprehensive. How do I manage. But then there's nobody to consult because the other officers have been put in charge of other stations. I can imagine something similar happened when COVID started in Bombay. Various young people would have been just taken up and put as your overall in charge. So, okay. So you ask, of course, you have these experienced Tasildars. Okay, if people start coming, I need beddings. I need people where they can sleep. So you consult the trade association and ask for, nobody talks of payment, etc. at that time. Can you give biddings? You don't even know whether you're buying it or just requisitioning it. Okay, you get help. You put all that. Then food. So you get hold of the big restaurants and say, can you cook for, okay, 5 of you, the so-called restaurant association. You talk to them and said, we want meals in this camp for 10,000 people. 10,000 are expected by tomorrow evening on this camp. So the moment that much food is served, you need cleanliness. You need plates, leaves. And I remember working round the clock, and at about 10 in the night, it occurred to me, okay, we have succeeded. We have given all of them food. Then it occurs to you, there aren't sufficient toilets for 10,000 people. And you can have a health catastrophe if you don't arrange it. So at 10 in the night, you ring up the executive engineer of the district and say, I want trenches to be made. Luckily, the Ayurvedic college has a lot of open ground. So away you make trenches, which can be used as latrines. And then you put some, what is it called? Khanat, just for privacy. But the moment you put trenches, you also need to keep it neat. So you ask the health officer, I want, bleaching powder or something, so that the moment in the morning somebody has used it, you just spray it, rather dust, put a whole lot of malathion and bleaching powder and disinfectants. Because in any such camp, the greatest simple things, how to organize drinking water, how to organize sanitation facilities, how to organize food, and how to ensure that you don't have an epidemic. Because they're going to stay there perhaps for a week, for 10 days, till the waters recede, until it becomes safe for them to go back. So these are kind of, in fact, one of the great things in joining services like the IASAs, everybody becomes a leader, not because of the books they read, but because of such situations they face, particularly in districts. So I can give more examples. Just to give one more example, much later, when I was working as a collector, at 11:30 in the night, I get a call that in an unmanned railway crossing, a bus which was crossing that railway crossing had been hit by a train. And there were people in that bus. Nobody knows even how many. You simply have to rush to the spot. You tell your driver, wake him up, and you can't wait. Time is the very essence. You ring up your resident deputy collector and tell him that you make the arrangements, alert the hospital. We want ambulances. We don't know what all we'll require. I am rushing to the site. Now, there are many such experiences which really trains you up. Conduct of elections is one such thing. You can't have anything going wrong. So a lot of leadership gets developed literally from the way you handle assignments. I must say, after spending about totally 6 years in districts, the district of Nanded, Aurangabad, Alibag, that is Raigad, and Satara, 8 years. Totally 8 years I was in district. And let me tell you, within those 8 years, I had developed a confidence. There is nothing which I will not be able to do. And I had not done any management training. My training was in physics. It is just because of the leadership roles which are thrust on you. But these were districts where the leadership came from the fact that everybody listens to an assistant collector. Everybody listens to a collector. Then you get, particularly in the IAS, you get transferred to what are called the staff functions. In staff functions, decisions are never taken by an individual. Decisions are always taken by teams. It's more a collegiate system. Just because you want something to be done, it can't be done. You have to convince people. You have to convince your colleagues in other departments. You have to prepare notes, convince and sell it to your bosses. That's a completely where the role which you played as a collector, if you try to replicate it, let us say in Mantralaya, you'll be a total failure. Because it's teams that function. Much, much later, when I worked in scientific departments, towards the end of my service, I was in the Department of Atomic Energy for 8 years. There, the system is a completely collegiate system. Because there is no hierarchy. There is the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission and the secretaries of the department. But every scientist is an expert in his field. There is somebody who's an expert chemical engineer. There is another who is an expert mechanical engineer. And you require seamless functioning. You can't design a project. You can't design a nuclear power station by one man knowing everything. You need electrical engineers, you need mechanical engineers, you need metallurgists, you need physics experts, you need mathematics experts, and all will need to work in a seamless fashion. So the only system of management which works in such areas is what I will call as a collegiate system, where there is no hierarchy. There is absolutely no hierarchy. Meetings are held, matters are discussed. Not even minutes are maintained in detail. Only action to be taken and who is responsible. Only that is fixed. It's a collegiate system of functioning. In scientific organizations, in organizations where you're dealing with a large number of professionals, all of whom are superior, all of whom are, you need a collegiate system. You can't have hierarchies. While in a collector's job, hierarchies function. As I said, in the secretariat, hierarchies don't function. So there are lot of difference between what we call as line functions, where you're executing some things, and staff functions, where you're doing policy making. Both are equally important. But the kind of leadership that is required is very, very different. There are some kinds of jobs where the fact that you're the leader needs to be known to people. While there are certain jobs where nobody needs to know, complete anonymity and very low profile, is what is required to get the job done. So there are a variety of management styles, a variety of different techniques which can be used in all this. But certain common things, which Mr. Ribeiro also stated. One is, you don't do anything individually. There are always teams. As a leader, you're always head of a team. And the first basic thing in that is, as Mr. Ribeiro said, please remember every member of your team has some strengths. Concentrate on the strengths of the people. And when you assign jobs to them, ensure that square holes. That is, round pegs are not used in square holes kind of thing. You have to, who will do this best? That assessment has to be made. That judgment has to be made. So, but you must have that positive attitude. Everybody has a strength. You see, people of some strengths of some people in your team comes out because he or she may be an extrovert. They're able to articulate. So you start feeling, he has good qualities. While there may be completely introvert people whose hidden strength doesn't come to your notice that quickly. It's your job as a leader to identify that strength. So you must have that positive attitude that every human being has a strength. Articulation is not a substitute for performance. Articulation is one added quality. It's good to have it, but you don't necessarily have to have it. It is performance which is more important. So you must, and your style should be such that nobody should feel that you're some favorites. You must kind of encourage everybody, identify what are the strengths, give them jobs which they are able to do so that you can pat them in the back. Instead of asking them to do a job which they are not good at. No, you know this is a strength, give a job which he or she will be able to do and then pat them. When they have done a small job, well, pat them so that their confidence increases. Now, leadership is also a very, very growing thing. There are big leaders. Big leaders always have visions, a long-term vision. Where is it that we want to reach 20 years from now, 15 years from now, 30 years from now? Dr. Homi Bhabha built up the atomic energy department when India did not have any atomic energy. It didn't even have engineering colleges. But the moment the neutron was discovered, this thought that this will become a huge source for energy came into Bhabha's head, and that vision he implemented. Verghese Kurian, the man who built the milk revolution in India. These are big leaders. The difference between big leaders and others is big leaders have a long-term vision. When I came to Bombay after my district training, rather district postings, there was shortage of milk in Mumbai. So you needed influence to get milk delivered at your house. Array Milk Dairy was the only dairy. So I had to talk to the Dairy Development Commissioner and say, sir, I want some milk. Then you'll be given a metal coupon, and that metal coupon gives you entitlement. Okay, you can get 2 liters of milk. Milk was in short supply in Mumbai around 1982 when I first came to Mumbai. Now milk is in plenty. How come? The entire credit goes to Dr. Verghese Kurian, who started Amul and who headed this cooperative organization. Now his story. So one method of developing leadership is also to read the biographies and autobiographies of some great people. The common thing is they all had a vision. They converted that vision to a number of missions. And since they had a long-term view, they didn't get perturbed or, disheartened because of ups and downs that will occur. Small ups and downs will keep occurring. Everything that you wanted will not take place as you wanted them. But as long as you have clarity in the mind regarding the vision, these small ups and downs don't disturb you. In fact, you provide leadership. Dr. Kalam belonged to the category. Vikram Sarabhai belonged to the category. Vikram Sarabhai was in charge of the space department. When a space launch did not succeed, Vikram Sarabhai will go before national television and say, my scientists have done excellent work. We have learned, and he will not ask his project manager to go before the national television. But when a launch is successful, he will always ask his project manager, now you go before national television, you're the man. And Vikram Sarabhai will only introduce him, saying he's the man who got this done. Failures will always be accepted by him. Successes, give it to the team leader and let him introduce the team, the entire team of people who have made it possible. So there are a lot of these, and it is not being done as a strategy it honestly comes. That is, you can't be a good leader unless you are also a good human being. It is true at all levels. A certain amount of leadership, by using your authority, you can get it done. But they are ephemeral. Authorities come and go. What I'm saying is true, irrespective of whether you're prime minister, chief minister, head of anything. Like the collector, you have authority. You can get certain things done. But when that authority also has a moral authority, you're leading by example, that's very, very different. People like Homi Bhabha, Vikram Sarabhai, Abdul Kalam, Verghese Kurian, Sridharan, these are all people who provided moral leadership. That is, the moment you have such a leader, his or her team members, each of them you ask them, they will say, for this man, I will do anything. I will do anything. That's what I started today by saying. A leader is somebody who is able to make ordinary people do extraordinary things. You're not really bothered who your team is, because your personal example is so high. The moment people come and touch with you, it's just a matter of a few months, and each of them will say, for this man, I will do anything. No question of complaining. No question of he's doing so much that I have to help him. That can come only when you have, in addition to leadership, a moral leadership that is leading from the front and walking the talk. You don't say something and do something else. No. In a different occasion, I had said, when top managements take a decision, it is not only a decision, but it sends a message across what kind of a man you are. And if you have that moral uprightness, that leader is no politician. Sridharan had that, the man who built up Konkan Railway and Delhi Metro. And since nobody could point a finger at him, in huge contracts involving 10,000 crores, 12,000 crores, he will write on the file and give the contract for L2 and not to L1 for reasons to be recorded in writing. And there won't be any complaints, because there are no skeletons in your closet. No, you're absolutely pure. So the highest form of leadership is that kind of what I will call as moral leadership, the kind of leadership that Mahatma Gandhi exhibited. So I think I will stop at this point. As I said, I can give 45 hours of lecture on leading people and organizations, but I shouldn't take more time. It's already 6:27 and we must provide time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will be taking a few questions now. There is a question for both of you from Aryan Solanki. And Aryan Solanki is asking, it's a twofold question. One is, what is the first quality of an ideal leader? And the second part of the question is, are there any leaders in the past or present that you look up to personally? So I will first ask Ribeiro, sir, to please answer this question.
I think both Mr. Raja and I have mentioned the main qualities of a good leader. I think he has also mentioned the same, that you should first practice what you preach, that if you do something else and expect your men to do something which is ideal, well, they are not going to do it because they have seen through you. Secondly, you must take the good qualities of the people who work for you and make the maximum advantage of it. So these are the two things that we both have agreed are elements of good leadership. Another one that I would add is, look, collective wisdom is perhaps superior to individual wisdom. That is one of the things. It can also prove wrong at times, but uh, individual wisdom might be superior at times. But generally, this is, you should consult others, and even the smallest, I said, participative management, the principle that management people, gurus teach you. So these are some of the things. Now you say, whom do I, uh, whom would I take? You know, when you join as a young officer, you look up to those who are senior to you and who are there molding you into the job. And I had a boss in the beginning, very beginning, called Mr. Nagarkar. He was from Pune, and Vasant Vinayak Nagarkar. And I always look up to him because what he did was, I used to stay in some hired quarter. He asked me to move from there into his own house. He said, I'm going to train you right, even about things which are not connected with work. And he was excellent leader and an excellent teacher, more than leader, the excellent teacher. And I think that all that I learned in the shape of values is what I learned from him. So I never forget him. You may not have heard of him. He's no longer, his wife also died recently. But unfortunately, I couldn't speak to her before she died because she was deaf at that advanced stage. Anyway, so this is in short. Mr. Raja?
Yes, I mean, I can certainly say, when I look back in my own career, the jobs where I've done exceedingly well to my satisfaction, a lot was also because I had bosses who permitted me to do it, who mentored me, encouraged me, and supported me if some little complications occurred. I can even mention names. I have no compunction on that. Even though I have a background in science, having done 2 physics major courses in the beginning, I worked in a scientific department called the Department of Atomic Energy. And even though I was a bureaucrat and not a scientist, because of the trust and confidence which Dr. Anil Kakodkar exhibited in me, I could do a lot of things. So mutual trust is something important, very, very important. Same, I did very good work when Mr. Datta Suktankar was the Chief Secretary of Maharashtra. Again, one Mr. K.G. Paranjape was the Chief Secretary of Maharashtra. Let me give an example of Mr. Paranjape. You know, I was at that time a Deputy Secretary. That is, there are people above you. The secretary is there, principal secretary is above you. And the subject allotted to me was zero-based budgeting. My boss was Dr. Madhav Godbole, who was the Principal Secretary of Finance in Maharashtra. So I was in charge of zero-based budgeting. I was doing all that. And then we had to report to the cabinet what we have done, what we have achieved about a year into the job. So I had prepared a cabinet note. It was presented in cabinet. It was presented in cabinet by Dr. Madhav Godbole. I, as Deputy Secretary, was just sitting in the back seat, side seat in the cabinet meeting. And the entire presentation was done. Many secretaries were there and the entire Maharashtra cabinet was there. After the cabinet meeting was over and the ministers had left, Mr. Paranjape, as Chief Secretary, came out of his chair, came to the place where I was sitting and said, "Excellent note, Raja." I mean, so he knows who has done the donkey's work, so to say. So these are things which, so I will say a lot of, and that gives you so much enthusiasm in the future. That is, nobody wants to do a lot of work. You don't mind if your boss gets a credit, but he should not take all the credit. If you have done the work, you deserve the credit yourself. So certainly, good leaders have a lot to do, and good leaders will always take care to develop and mentor the subordinates in whatever job they are, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector. In any organization, a good leader will develop the youngsters.
Thank you, sir. I will take one more question, and this is a common one coming from Ishan Chitnis, Vignesh Narayan, and Advocate Anu Sharma. And they are asking, and both of you can answer this question, sir, and they are asking that how do you deal with people working in a team but having different interests and ideologies? That is, how do you bring them together as a leader? So I'll first request Ribeiro sir to please answer this question.
Well, if you have different ideologies, if it is something to do with religion, and then it becomes difficult, but because you don't have to get into it, you have to skirt it, you have to be clever to skirt that. But if it is about what could the ideology, leftist ideology, and there is a rightist ideology, I don't know, you have to be very careful to do the correct thing, because you have a constitution, you have the law. For example, today, there are a lot of cases being put up against people who don't follow a certain ideology. I mean, they might have protested, and you get a case against you that you find it is rather unjust. Well, you can't do anything about it except protest yourself. But if you were in charge, you should not do a thing like that. Don't be unjust at any time. Even if the ideology is different, you have to do the correct thing. That is, according to the law, according to the constitution. If anybody commits an offense, whatever may be his party affiliation, he should be punished. Otherwise, everybody else gets encouraged to do the wrong thing. So this is, if you want a country ruled by the rule of law, then you have to be very careful about that you are just in your dealings with people. People know at once that you are not going to take sides, for instance. I remember even Balasaheb Thackeray, on the last day that I was the commissioner, I opened a police station. He had not been invited, but he came. And he said that I have not been invited, but I have come just to say that I appreciate Mr. Ribeiro. I have not agreed with him ever, and he has been on different sides from me, but he never was unjust in anything. And that I thought was a great compliment, great compliment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Raja, sir?
I think in 99% of the cases, ideology doesn't matter. Because if you're a leader of a team, there is an objective to be achieved, there is a job to be done, and your personal ideology on various matters, you can hang it in a coat hanger, and it doesn't concern your job. This happens in 99% of the cases. People are free to have their ideologies, people are free to have their opinions, and that there is no it doesn't contradict the job that is at hand, the objective to be achieved. But there could be 1% cases when such conflict comes. I have faced such conflicts also, not too many, 3 or 4 times. And then you have 2 choices. One is you can say that the constitution doesn't permit it. I don't have time to go into details, but there have been an occasion when I've gone right up to the chief minister and told him that, sir, you have taken an oath to the constitution. I have taken an oath to the constitution. What you expect to be done is unconstitutional. And somebody or the other will take it up in court and there will be strictures on this. There was a case when I told the Deputy Chief Minister of Maharashtra, when I'm alone with him, sir, please remember, a governor of Maharashtra lost his job for interfering with the MD admission of his daughter. A former Chief Minister of Maharashtra had to resign for again interfering with the MD admission of his daughter. So what you're suggesting, number one, is not possible, but I strongly advise that you do not overrule me, because it will be against your political career. So this is, okay, what's the best that can happen? If he doesn't like it, he will transfer you. Third is, you can go and say, I have conscience problems on this. So you post me somewhere else. Or put me in a different team. But as I'm again repeating, in 99% of the cases, ideology, doesn't have much to do with your job. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Over to you, Sejal.
Thank you, Mr. Raja sir and Mr. Ribeiro sir. I would like to express my special thanks of gratitude to all the participants for participating in this webinar today. I would like to thank Mr. Ribeiro sir and Mr. Raja sir for sharing their experiences and spending some time with us. I would like to extend my thanks to all the PCGT trustees and to all the college dignitaries of VG Vaze College. I would like to thank our principal, Mr. Dr. B.B. Sharma sir, and our vice principal, C.A. Vidyadhar Joshi sir, for allowing us to organize such a webinar today. I would also like to thank all the organizing committee members of Vaze Model United Nations, without whom this particular webinar could not have been organized. And I would like to thank Mr. Shivam Jain Kakaria, who helped us throughout the event. Thank you.